everybody, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, CodeMarvelous, and today I am joined by another repeat guest, Chris from Hidden Assets.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
Now, Chris does his own YouTube channel, as I mentioned, Hidden Assets, but he's also pretty into the Gagarin identity. And he took a skeleton that people have been putting into IG. I put it into NEH, and he made a pretty strong competitive Gagarin build, which we're going to go over today. For those of you who don't know, Gagarin is the 4515 Wayland identity that says that as an additional cost to access any card in a remote, the runner must pay 1 credit. So do you want to set up, Chris, why you picked this identity and what kind of the core focus of the deck is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Dan. Basically, Gagarin is particularly good for asset spam. I think that's kind of known in the community because of that extra 1 credit tax. It's interesting because Wizard and other asset trash like programs like Parisia or whatever, they still have to pay the 1 credit tax to access. So you can't use those credits. So it's kind of like it gets a little bit under that. It plays to the strengths of lots and lots of assets, and yeah, so that's kind of what started it. I mean, it won't really work in Blue Sun, won't really work in Core Wayland. This is Gagarin's specifically designed asset spam identity, right? It's meant for that. So
right, and I think the other thing that's worth noting is that one of the most potent abilities of Gagarin is that just checking a server, like if you're a wizard and you check a server and you're like, well, that's a hostile infrastructure that he can't res yet, I'm just not going to deal with that yet. Okay, you've lost a click. With Gagarin, you have to lose a click and a credit just to see what it is, which is not insignificant, especially in the early game.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Agenda Suite. So we have 2x Global Food.
Yep. Not much to say here other than it's the best 3-5 in the game, and until it goes on the most wanted list, it's going to continue to be the best 3-5 in the game. It makes this deck's agenda density really nice. Having 10 agendas in a 54 card deck is about 1 in 5 chance that someone's going to hit something. But most of the time, because you're in a 54 card deck, that feels like it's much lower than that. And they have to score exactly 4 agendas, whereas you generally just have to score 3, or like maybe 3 and another card that we'll talk about in a little bit.
Right. So we have 2 NAPD contracts exiting a lot of decks these days, but tell me a little bit about why is NAPD worth the 1 influence apiece in this deck?
This is almost a free agenda to score most of the time because runners either will not have the cash on hand to score it, or they simply will not try because they know it'll bankrupt them, which makes it ideal for Gagarin because it effectively costs 5 to steal, which is crazy. Right. And then if you just throw any ice in front of it, they have to have both the icebreaker out and they have to pay through the ice, so it becomes very difficult to steal.
Okay. We have Oaktown Renovation, probably my favorite Wayland agenda, though not the most powerful Wayland agenda. For
sure, yeah. I think if this was a 2-3, this deck would be easily like head and shoulders above where it is right now. But it's Oaktown is kind of what we have to put in here in this slot, and it's fine. It's good. Sometimes you end up getting the runner really low and you slam an Oaktown and advance it to get yourself back up to a manageable economy. And that's really what you want to do, is kind of float enough credits to be able to res all your ice and to keep your agendas flowing. Oh, it's a good agenda. Yeah.
It's a fantastic agenda. Yeah. Get money for doing what you were going to do anyway.
Exactly.
With the Tyrell building in the background.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. We have Project Atlas because Project Atlas is just the best Wayland agenda.
For sure, yeah. I rarely ever overscore this, just to be very clear. I'm usually more interested in just winning the game than finding stuff out of my deck. So
but it's still good if you can get the counter. The counters are super potent.
Yep.
All right, Corporate Town. It's making the rounds in a lot of green decks. Tell me about Corporate
Yeah.
Town.
This card's power level is way through the roof, especially in a meta where everyone is playing 12 or to 14 resources. This card is insane, and I have frequently sacrificed an Atlas or an Oaktown or an NAPD to get this online safely, because sometimes it can just win you the game. It's that
Oh,
good.
absolutely. The most important part of this card, if for those of you who aren't aware, you forfeit an agenda, which can be anything, right? But when your turn begins, you trash one resource. Cannot be prevented. No
Yeah.
fall guys, no nothing. Just gone. So wild side gone. Whatever else they need, just gone. Aesop's gone. And if they can't get to it because you're taking away their power, like if you take away their wild side to feed their Faust and they can't get to it, you're just going to destroy their back line.
Yeah. One of the things I have talked to people about with regards to this card is that sometimes you just want to throw it out there and just res it naked, or put a single ice in front of it, which is usually enough to keep it around for a while. Because Anarchs specifically like to drop to 0 credits a lot, and that means that they're probably not going to have enough credits to trash this for at least 2 turns, which is enough time. But I've had games that are kind of weird where the runner has been checking everything and making sure it's been, everything's trashed that they don't want on the board. And so I'll just make a scoring server and throw Corporate Town behind it and start waiting the runner out. And in that case, I'll blow up all their stuff and they'll be at time to levy, and then I'll start scoring then in the next 2 or 3 turns and win in that way. That's actually a fairly decent way to use this card as well.
I also love the aesthetic of this card, just as a side note.
Yeah.
I love that it's super futuristic 1950s. He's got the post-war, but the cyber noir post-war suit. I don't know. Those little homages there in Netrunner make me very happy. We have 3x Daily Business Show, because Daily Business Show is really good in anything playing Museum of History. Well, it's good in general, but it's really good in anything playing Museum of History.
Yeah, so this include is all you're doing, basically, because I took your Temple of History, is that right? Temple of History?
Temple of Eternity,
no, Temple of Eternity, sorry. Temple of Eternity, and I took the essential pieces out that I could easily splash, and this was the best splash for sure. And having 54 cards, but being able to easily select out of those 3 or 4 cards that you draw, 1 card that'll help you that turn is the game, more or less. If you can get 2 or 3 of these things running, I can't see you losing most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love this card. It's so good.
Yeah.
We have Elizabeth Mills, because, when we weren't hating on Wildside enough with Corporate Town. We needed another way.
Well, Corporate Town is good, but it's expensive. It costs you an agenda, so that's actually an investment in your board state. So Elizabeth Mills is it's a backup plan if you need it, but I don't like giving the runner bad pub. I will use it aggressively if I have both Elizabeth Mills and another card in my hand. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But mostly this was a tech for the Val matchup, because I wasn't sure if people were going to be playing Val or go back to a kind of weird Reg Anarch Val build, but I didn't see any.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right, so we have Executive Boot Camp to do Executive Boot Camp things like fish for whatever you need, and also break R&D lock, etc., etc.
Exactly. I mean, you said it. The main reason this is in here is it's the second hostile infrastructure, the second Elizabeth Mills, the second Corp Down. That's it. I mean, there's really nothing else in here that I need to say about this card. It's just good.
Yep, it's a fantastic card. And if you don't need anything and they decide not to trash it, you can always res stuff for cheaper, which is great. From a design space, it's a fantastic card. That's power level isn't super high, but it's just a solid card.
Exactly.
We have Hostile Infrastructure, one of my favorite Netrunner cards.
Yeah, this is to help stave off the Apocalypse Kate decks that were running around, and sometimes the Dark Max builds. Apocalypse just wrecks this deck if you have no way of teching against it, but a single hostile infrastructure will keep them from apocalypsing, and they'll have to trash it, and it costs a lot of money, and so you can stabilize in that time. Correct. Usually.
Jackson Howard doing Jackson Howard stuff.
Yeah, not much to say here.
No, but yeah, Jackson Howard doing that thing that Jackson Howard does.
Yeah, I actually just to touch on that, I have been thinking about cutting a single one, and another friend of mine who piloted this deck to second place in the store championship I won. He took almost the exact same deck. He cut a Howard, and it was really good. And I'm considering
put in place of it.
Corporate Troubleshooter.
Ugh.
It was sick. Actually, it was
so
pretty
bad.
Good. Yeah. I mean, like a strength 10. What do you call it? Tour guide is pretty crazy. So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we have my favorite new neutral card, Mumba Temple.
This card's good, man. This pack had a lot of sleeper hit cards. Mumba Temple is one of them. It makes you so much money over the game and especially in an ID this costs 4 to trash, effectively, for Gagarin. That's just crazy. And they won't trash it. I've rarely seen people trash Mumba Temple. They're just like, oh, you have money. That's fine. You're like, okay, I got money. I never have to do anything else for the rest of the game to get money. I'll just have free money for the rest of the game. Is that okay? Yeah, sure, It's okay. Yeah.
Secret tech for all you viewers at home. I've started teaching people in my local meta who are getting frustrated with my deck that runs a similar skeleton. You trash it the second you see it. I have kept track of my games with my temple deck, and if my temples survive more than 2 turns, I win. I will win the game.
Yeah, I think this isn't the must trash in the deck. We could talk about that a little bit, but I think this is like one of the top 5 must trash cards. There's a lot of must trash cards. There's a lot of must trash cards in this deck.
No, yeah. I mean, but temples just, especially early on, like. Your runner game is built around making the corpse spend money, right? That's how you stall the early game when the corp's not set up. So by not trashing this card, you help the corp get to the mid game really fast.
That's true. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, we have another sleeper hit from this pack that everybody panned when it was spoiled, but now people understand the power, Chris.
This is the best card in the deck.
Oh,
I'm going to go out. This is the best card in the deck. This is the #1 must trash card in the deck. It is the power level of Museum History is unbelievable. It keeps your deck from. It saves Wayland. Let me put it this way: Wayland's problem for a long time has been R&D is weak. R&D gets so weak by the mid to end game. This card makes your mid and end game R&D still super thick. So you just have like. There's very little chance of you losing on R&D if you have a bunch of Museum of Histories cycling through, and especially if they're trashing your stuff, because they just go right back in the deck. It's redundancy, and it is just a beautiful card. And I think some people have actually said that it's an unfun card to play against because of that. I don't think it's unfun. I think it's a fun card. I actually love it.
It's fun for somebody.
It is fun for somebody.
Just probably not them.
Yeah.
So we have 3x pad campaigns. I hear money's good in Netrunner.
Money's good. Yep, gotta have it.
Especially if you could potentially be paying nothing for it.
Exactly.
Like Mumba Temple. Oh, it feels so good when that happens.
Most of this deck ends up rezzing stuff for free. That's just how it works. And it makes a lot of money. It makes a lot of money. So does your deck. Your deck makes a ton of money. This deck makes a ton of money. So it's crazy.
It's actually to the point where in the late game in my deck, and I don't know if you consider this, I have 2 hostile infrastructures. I'm actually considering cutting 1 to put in a single ash, so I have another way to leverage that absurd amount of money into victory.
Yeah, I think that's good. I was kind of going a similar direction, but I don't have the influence for more than 1 hostile infrastructure. But yeah, I would totally do that. I was actually try to splash a tour guide or 2 in your deck. To be honest, that card is insane. Like, just imagine the value of tour guide in NEH. No one's done that yet. So I would consider doing that, taking out 2 hostiles and putting 2 tour guides in and just saying, like, come at me, because at some point they can't get through it all. Yeah.
As I mentioned when we were discussing this deck, and let's get back on topic, we'll talk about tour guide. Um, I have like a pathological problem with tour guide because I'm a noise player, and in my mind, I'm like, well, I can't play a 0 strength piece of ice because it's just gonna die. But we'll talk more about that. We have 3x public support, which is like the Gagarin card. Like when I think Gagarin decks, like when I make certain decks, there's like cards I start with 3 of. When I make a Gagarin deck, I'm like, well, let's just throw 3 public supports in.
Yeah. This is the hostile the hostile takeover of Gagarin. It's fantastic. Usually you're resing it for free. It costs 5 to trash in Gagarin. And the runner has to deal with it in some capacity because getting you on 1 point means you just have to score 2 threes or 2 fours or then NAPD, and they don't expect that. They don't expect you to actually start pushing after they've tried to trash things. So they're wasting time with Museum of History and maybe this, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just push an agenda. And they're like, well, I don't have money to go get that. Oh, fine. Well, I'll just shuffle back my public support and start it eventually when I draw it again with my daily business shows. So, it's the synergy here is crazy, and they have to trash it. So
Right. Because otherwise, I mean, I think most people who have a strong amount of game familiarity are going to know that if you're running Gagarin, you probably have Corporate Town. And if you have Corporate Town, it's just such an amazing synergy, as you said, because it costs you 2, or maybe it costs you nothing. It costs 5 to trash, just so that they can prevent you from getting a point, right?
Yeah.
It feels great. And Elizabeth Mills again, the savior
Elizabeth Mills. That's right.
The savior of Wayland. Like
also to note, there's a California flag in the background of that picture, and so it's sort of like I'm from California, so it's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, I always imagine like there's no specific reference, but if you get the World of Android book, they talk about how the drill that is on Project Vulcan caused like a huge tsunami, and Wayland insured all of the buildings on the Ring of Fire and also bought all of the rebuilding contracts so that they could make money 3 ways on that tragedy. And it looks to me like this is her talking about the rebuilding plans and everybody being like, yeah, Wayland, way to come in and help during a tragedy. Like that's what I imagine this card is.
Wow, that's some good backstory. I really like that. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, if you get the World of Android book, there's a whole section on how Wayland basically figured out that their like geothermal super drill was going to cause like a huge earthquake. They're like, well, we can't stop using the drill, but we can find a way to make even more money. Like, yeah,
I love it. I love Wayland.
Yeah, it's so terrible. Yeah, we'll insure the buildings so we make the money when they get destroyed, and then we'll also get the rebuilding contracts. The root.
This I should, in full disclosure, this card was cut for my Store Championship deck in favor of another card which is not on here, which is Interns. And I would do that if anyone was expecting to play this deck in a tournament. Cut the root. The root's unnecessary. It's good, but it's win more. And everyone I played with and I tested the deck with has basically told me that. So I would cut it. It's okay. Like if you're doing casuals, it's not going to hurt it. It won't hurt your deck, but it's just sort of like I have infinite money and I have the root credits.
Right.
Who cares? Yeah.
Whereas Interns basically gives you a comeback from behind opportunity.
Yeah. It also combos really well with Elizabeth Mills. So you can install Liz, you can res her, you can trash something, and then like next turn you can just Interns her back and take the bad pub off or whatever. So that really helps out the deck. You don't want to give bad pub at this deck.
No, absolutely not. So another great card. We have 3x Turtlebacks.
Yeah. It's kind of like necessary in these asset spam decks, I think. And if you're playing asset spam and you're not playing Turtlebacks, you're probably playing it very poorly, or you're playing a poor deck. I'm not saying that Turtlebacks is essential, but the amount of credits that it makes you.
Oh no, I would say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it cut me deep to go down to 2 Turtlebacks in my NEH deck. The only reason I felt comfortable doing that is because I have pop up and the NEH draw to get me through my deck faster and get me to my other money cards.
Yeah, that
Like,
makes sense.
it's 100% necessary in these types of decks because it creates that synergy that lets you accelerate, right? Like, asset spam by itself, just having a bunch of shit on the board, isn't actually that good unless you're creating some sort of synergy engine that generates you a lot of money that they have to deal with. Otherwise,
Right.
they'll just ignore everything you're installing.
Right, exactly. It's value from everything. So what are they going to do? Trash your turtlebacks? You're totally fine with that.
Right.
It doesn't even matter because you have money elsewhere. But if they don't, and they won't, you'll just like basically it's an exponential curve. Eventually, you just start getting more and more money, and you'll have like 30 to 40 credits, and you don't know what to do with it. So that comes back to what you were talking about earlier.
I wish I could have this card in my NEH deck. I
Cut
want
another
Chrissy.
turtlebacks.
No. If anything, I would cut the encryption protocols, but my encryption protocols basically give me the Gagarin ability, functionally.
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about Chrysium.
So this is the best upgrade in Wayland. It's not even close, and it essentially goes. It depends on the matchup. It goes on R&D against like Kate Maker's decks. It goes and indexing. It's indexing in Makers is crazy popular in my area, and also it just hoses Apocalypse and things like that, and Medium and Keyhole. And sometimes you'll play up against a Keyhole deck, and you're just like, okay, well I'll just install Ice, install Chrysium Grid, go, and they're like, well, okay.
No,
I guess I won't access ever, and I won't ever Keyhole. So
Chrysium against
game
the
over.
Keyhole Eater deck is like the best thing.
Yeah. It's almost impossible for them to beat you unless they beat you in the first couple turns before you find it. I honestly want to find a space for a third Chrysium Grid because there's no time I don't want it. At worst, it's money with turtlebacks. At worst.
And one of the biggest weaknesses of these asset spam decks, or at least what I found in my testing, is since you're kind of windmilling stuff out of your HQ and piling ice on your R&D, your HQ ends up being vulnerable to Siphon decks.
It does. And that's why Chrysium Grid is also useful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, against criminals, you stack on HQ instead of R&D, and you just put like one ice on R&D, and you're pretty good. But yeah, stack ice and then Chrysium Grid.
All right, so we have a single Cyberdex.
Yep. Sometimes this card can win you the game. Sometimes it simply saves your ice, and that's good enough for me. It's amazing. It's won me several games where I'd get medium dug, and then it'd be hit, and then they'd trash it. Next turn, I'd shuffle it back with Museum of History. So medium is most of the time off because they're worried that it's not going to actually do anything. They won't ever get some accesses more than like 2 or something like that. But it also has it's really good to combo with things like not Architect. I'm sorry, Assassin, which is one of the ice we'll talk about in a minute. But the fact is like most Anarch decks need to sucker that ice, and if you get Cyberdex on the board with an Assassin on the table, and they have to run through the Assassin, making them spend 3 to 4 cards is not insignificant, and it can actually win you the game.
Yep. The other thing is almost all, even the Wizard deck, which is mostly Faust dependent, not necessarily sucker dependent.
Still runs 3 suckers.
Right, but it depends on medium digs to close the game. Depends on it.
Yep. So this plus Chrysium does a lot of work for me.
So we got 2x Diversified. So about this card, if you look at the asset category of the deck, everyone, if you get half of this on the table, actually let's be more realistic. Let's say you get a third of it on the table, then you're highly likely to get at least a net of 8 credits.
Yep.
It's comically good.
So, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about this card. It might be overkill, to be honest, and I might go down to 1. But it's so good. it's like a double hedge fund. Usually, it like averages about 8 credits, I think. And in the finals, I think I at one point drew a diversified, and I was just like, well, I have 25 credits. Do I need more money?
Right.
You know, but that's just part of the deck. Like at some point, it spirals out of control with money, and you just, you know, you have all of these things you're shuffling back because of Museum of History. So it's not horrible to have extra money, but it is sometimes a little overkill, especially late game.
After we get done making this video, I want to take a look. That looks like the Polana Foods building in the background.
Yeah, I think it's either that or it's the draft ID, the Wayland draft ID building. I'm not sure what that one's called, but it looks a lot like that.
So we have Hadrian's Wall.
It's just good. This is one of 3 ice that are over 5 strength that runners will care about. And the idea is to get 2 large ice stacked back to back. So Hadrian's Wall Assassin's really good on R&D. If you're against an Anarch, it's very difficult for them to consistently use David. And if they're going through using a David and then hitting like a Chrysium grid, it's very sad because they're only going to get 1 access no matter what they do. So sometimes they just won't even run it. They'll try to parasite it, which is fine. I mean, it's whatever. Like they parasite your Hadrian's Wall, who cares? But Poto Boy Z99, who is one of the guys who also played this deck at the SC that I won, played 2 Hadrian's Walls, and he said it was a significant upgrade. So I'd consider doing that.
Okay, so we have 3x Spiderweb.
Yeah.
Bad for Faust.
Bad for Faust, man. Like a double stacked Spiderweb costs 6 cards, and they usually want to parasite those things. So, you know, they're not parasiting things that actually matter if they're parasiting Spiderweb.
Yeah, I agree. We have 2x Enigma. It's great early game ice. Taxes Faust cards.
Yeah, I mean this would be something that's 3 strength if Wayland had any code gates worth a damn, but they don't. So we're playing Enigma.
We have Assassin.
Yeah, it's just really good.
It's just really, really good. If people face check this, the likelihood of Zero Link Runner being able to cough up the 9 credits to deal with both of these subs is just unreal.
Yeah, it's very irritating for a noise player too, because noise players don't generally want to pitch their stuff pitch 4 cards to an assassin to not lose their cards anyway. Basically, it's a lose-lose for 0 strength runners, which Wizard is at one as well. But yeah, it's one of the best neutral ice in a long time.
We have 2x Caduceus.
It's good. Yeah, this is usually free. I will sometimes just put this is a good ice for your lower priority assets. Like sometimes I'll put or even your higher priority, like maybe a Museum of History behind a Caduceus, and they'll run it and you'll gain $3 back and they'll just end the run. And it's just like, okay, cool. I res my ice for free, you know, and it's just a fantastic ice for that. So
we have Tour Guide. This is the one you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, this is the backbone of the deck in a lot of the time. You will find runners not have an answer to this card most of the time. In fact, shout out to Spags. His Pitchfork deck has no answer to this card whatsoever. And if he was playing against this deck, I think he'd have to win on R&D before you got your Tour Guides rezzed. And as soon as that happens, the game is in your favor for sure. Which is sad because I think that deck is super awesome. It's actually one of my favorite decks right now. But it has this problem. Like you either have to pack Shrike or Mongoose or Parasite. And if you're not packing those 3 things, this card is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Or I should say, or Switchblade.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah. Usually it has like 8 subs, and you can stack them. Parasite's kind of a problem, but the main thing you want to do is use these for late game. And so
you've also got Museum of History.
Yeah. It's tricky. It's like a tug of war between you and the runner who's trying to kill your tour guides, but you want to keep them available. and you want to keep them rezzed, or you want to keep them like useful. So
Right.
if you suspect parasite, sometimes I will try to bait the run so that they'll parasite something else, and then res tour guide on, like, when they're running without a parasite, clone chip, because clone chip is actually the problem. It's not parasite.
Right. All right, so that's the basics of the Legends of the Hidden Temple deck.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I mean that was like the show back in the day. Come on, that was like Ninja Warrior for kids.
That's right. It was horrible for those kids, man. I remember watching it, and most of the time they couldn't get through like the first 2 rooms. But
It's fine.
why you need a
Nickelodeon
tour
was
guide.
good for that. It's like borderline child abuse game shows.
That's right.
But yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on. It's always great having you come on to talk about your decks.
My pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me.
You can find Chris on YouTube. He runs the Hidden Assets YouTube, as I mentioned before. Check him out. There's some good video content on there. And he is also pretty much everywhere on Netrunner related as CJFM.
Yep. Just drop me a line. We'll talk.
You
If
know,
you have Gagarin builds you want to talk about or something, I don't know, or Nasir builds.
whatever. If it's green, you'll play it.
I love green.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in the Pacific Northwest, man.
Absolutely. So, everybody, for those of you who don't know, And Our Black Hats has a new podcast format, the Netrunner Quest that we're doing. Follow us as we try to get a little bit better at this game. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Twitter, and on Facebook. Thanks very much for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Take care.